Let's go ahead and continue where we left off with our first web app that we built. Last thing we did, we talked about how controllers were working with the views, that you could do a redirect to action, a redirect. You could work with the view bag, which was a data dictionary with a key and a value. I'm going to go ahead and open up that project again. And if you remember, in the home controller, we modified our index method to do a redirect. I'm going to go ahead and change that back. Let's just make that back to the view. We'll point to the regular view. And I currently still have the about method receiving a number. Let's go ahead and change that parameter back. And then I'm going to just put some message instead of the inum. So what I did is I changed the view method to go back to the view for index. I got rid of the parameter in the about box, or the about method, and I changed the view bag from having inum back to hello. So if I now ran that program, just to make sure you're doing the same stuff that I've got, it should go ahead and open up our index view, where before, remember, it tried to do the index view and redirected to the about view in the home controller. So this time it should go straight to the index view and then allow us to click on the about if we wanted to do that. So let's see if that will work for us. So our index method actually returned the index view in the home controller. The about method returns the about view in the home controller, and there's our dictionary and our other stuff we have in our dictionary. So it looks like the changes we made work. Let's go ahead and now modify our project to have another controller. Now we already have one controller. Why on earth would we want more controllers? In programming, we like to compartmentalize or organize our source code based upon functionality. We could just put everything we wanted in one controller if we wanted. But if we put all the common code in its own controller, it's going to be a lot easier to maintain and a lot easier to debug. So let's go ahead and go back to our index view first. So we go to the views in our home, and there's index. We open up that view, and we currently had these links that would send it to a certain place. I'm going to go ahead and add a brand new div in that index view. I'll just copy this div and paste it in. And instead of web hosting, I'm just going to put the word information, and I'm going to get rid of that p tag, so there's only the h2 and this p tag. And the learn more will now say click me for more information. And so if I went ahead and ran that, when the index method is called from the home controller, it will open up the index view. And where I used to have the 3 different links on that view, if you now notice, I have 4. There's our new information. Click me for more information. Now notice that it wrapped around. If I maximize my window, now it just sends it off to the right. Why is that? Well, take a look. Here we said we had a Jumbotron, which is our Bootstrap. And with Bootstrap, when we create a new row, that row is made up of 12 column positions. I have 4 divs, and within each of my divs, I said I want to use 4 slots. So if I added those all up, I'm currently at 16 columns. So let's go ahead and make sure that within our div, we only use our 12 columns. So I'll change each of those to 3. And I'm going to run that one more time. And hopefully this time when we see our index page show up, we'll notice that that new link is aligned with the other columns. And there it is off to the right. So it took our 12 and tried to divide it up. Go ahead and close that page. And let's add a brand new row. So I can come in here and I'm just going to copy my row and another div. I'll paste that in, and then make sure you close off this div. And I'm going to copy this middle code. Well, before I do that, let's go ahead and change this. And let's say that's going to be the word students. And this p tag will be gone. And then we want to copy and paste another div. And we're going to make that div 6 columns and this div 6 columns. This will be students and this one will be courses. Go ahead and pause and make sure you have that code. So we added another row. Now go ahead and run it, and let's see if we had one row with the 4 columns and then another row with our 2 columns. And within those 2 columns, we should have links, which we do. And there's our nice little links that we've set up. Now, how does that actually work? Well, these are just Ahrefs. And an Ahref says, if you ever click on this Bootstrap button, then go to that link. Well, let's learn something different. Let's do some Razor. And I want to learn how to actually work with a Bootstrap button. And instead of the href, I just want to put my own button in there. So instead of writing my own HTML, let's use what we call an HTML helper. Since it's Razor, we put an @ sign and then type HTML dot. We have an HTML class. We're now doing C#. And we want to use the action link helper, which actually creates an anchor HTML tag for us. The first parameter you pass it will be the text that's underlined. So we're going to say list students, comma, that's the first parameter. Second parameter is going to be the name of the method or action method you want to call in a controller. So let's just do that one as list students, one word. And then the third parameter is what controller. And we're just going to say that that controller is going to be called the student controller. And then I close off that action link. Let me go ahead and save that and run it, and I want to show you what happens. So what we actually did is we used a Razor HTML helper action link to create an href tag for us. There's the list right there. And if I look at my view code, right mouse click, view page source, it says that if you ever click on the word list students, we're going to send you to the student controller and try to find the list students method or action method. So let's go ahead and come back to our program, and we need to go create a brand new controller. So the reason we're doing this is because we want to keep our source code organized. So I'm going to right mouse click on controllers and choose add controller, and I'm going to choose an empty controller, click on add, and we're going to call this the student controller. Now if you notice, when Visual Studio creates this controller for you, it's already going to have one method inside of it, and that method is going to be the index method. You don't have to keep that method though if you don't want to. In fact, I'm going to change that method. Remember, when we were working with that link, we said go to the student controller and go to the list students method. So back in the student controller, I'm going to name that list students. And then we're going to go ahead and simulate that we have some data from a database. We'll try to learn that later on. And so I'm going to create a data structure that actually holds data. So what I did is I just created a new variable called LST students of type list string, And I went ahead and called the constructor so that I do have that list variable now. And then I called the add method 4 times, adding buckwheat, alfalfa, Darla, and Spanky. Now that I have that list created with data in it, I want a view to use it. Now, if you remember, back over in the index, I said the view it was going to use was going to be the list students in the student controller. So if they clicked on this, we would then want to show all the students. So back in our student controller, I need to send that data to a view. So I can just pass that as a parameter. Now the problem is I'm passing that as a parameter to a view called list students. But if you look over here, even though I created a brand new controller called student controller, and even though Microsoft Visual Studio created a brand new folder called student, because I created a student controller, it did that automatically for us. We do not have any views in there. We still need to create a view. So put your cursor somewhere inside of that new method, list students, right mouse click, and choose add view. And it will automatically populate the view with the same name as the method. Click add, and we have a brand new view. The one thing that we need to do, though, is we need to tell this view that we need to use that data that just came in. So we need to modify our view using Razor to do the following. Now that I have that view, I went and modified it, and I said, hey, we are going to bring in a new model. Remember, model is data. And we said the type of model or data that's coming in is going to be a list of type string. Now, if you remember, go back and look at your student controller. Do you remember what we said past that model? List students, which is a list of type string. And so when you say return view list students, .NET automatically passes that list variable data to the view. That then gets passed or attached to this view as a model. So down here I can do a razor sign and say for each variable called item in the model, go print off that variable. This statement says that we have a model attached to the view which is linked automatically to that. So one by one it will say grab an item out of the list, store it here, now print it off. Make sure you have Razor in front of it, otherwise it'll just print the word item. I could have called this anything. I could have called it student, but then I'd want to make sure that I'm printing off student. Now go back to your index view, run the program, and we're going to want to go and click on that list student and see if we can actually see all of that data from that list. And there it is, buckwheat, alfalfa, Darla, and Spanky. The last thing I want to do for this video is instead of just having this action link as an underlying text, I want to add more parameters. The fourth parameter are any type of data you want to pass to the method. We're not going to do that right now. We'll do that in our next video. But the parameter that I do want to pass it is I want it to be a Bootstrap button. I'm going to drop this down so you can see it a little bit better. And the way we do a Bootstrap button is we say new, because we're going to create an object, curly brace, razor, class equals Bootstrap button, btn primary, and then I also want to add the btn large attribute, double quote, curly brace, parentheses. Make sure it looks just like that. Let's run it one more time and see if our link, which said list students, has now turned into a nice Bootstrap button that when we click on it, it turns into the list students view, there it is, which then shows all the data from that model.